His final words to her showed no sign of remorse.
You really want this on video?
I'll pull it. I'm mad enough to pull it.
Neighbors called 911 and Carey was quickly arrested, but investigators still wanted to find out why he had done it. They got their answers when an audio recording of the argument in the home was found.
Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the channel if you're new. And without wasting any time, let's get to the video.
Level 6. Amy Bradley. When insurance agent Ron Bradley won an all-expenses-paid Caribbean cruise from his employer, it seemed like just what the family needed. So they shelled out $2,000 for their children, Amy and Brad, to come along. And this would turn out to be a fateful decision. On March 21st, 1998, 23-year-old Amy Bradley, fresh out of college, boarded the Royal Caribbean cruise ship Rhapsody of the Seas along with her parents and brother. The first 2 days went by, then on the 23rd, they docked in Aruba. Amy went for an art auction with her mother, and at night, she and her brother hit the ship's nightclub, dancing among other passengers and crew. Video footage captured by Chris Fenwick that night shows Amy laughing, moving to the music, carefree under the flashing lights. At one point, she's joined by one of the band's members, Alistair Douglas. Just after 3 a.m., Amy and Brad returned to their cabin. They spent some time together on the balcony, then Brad went inside to sleep. Early the next morning, before 5:30 a.m., their father peeked out and saw Amy still there sleeping on a lounge chair. But by 6 a.m., when he looked again, Amy was gone, along with her cigarettes and lighter. Yet her shoes were still in the room. The family searched where they could, but there was no sign of Amy. And during that time, Alistair Douglas came up to Amy's brother and made a very troubling statement. This was especially suspicious since there hadn't been any announcement made about her disappearance. Like that wasn't weird enough, when crew and passengers were interviewed, 3 people claimed to have seen Amy on the upper decks with Alistair Douglas after her last known sighting. He later submitted to a polygraph, but it was inconclusive. Over the next few weeks, the Coast Guard scoured the ocean, security footages were reviewed, but no sign of Amy. Early theories ranged from accidental fall or suicide to voluntary disappearance, but many found those explanations hard to swallow. For one, even though Amy was a strong swimmer and trained as a lifeguard, she had a healthy fear of the ocean and never went near the railings. There was also no sign of evidence that she had taken her own life. Then there was the troubling news about the cruise line trying to cover its tracks by getting rid of videos that had Amy in them. Amy's disappearance was aired on America's Most Wanted, and in the following month, several people claimed to have seen Amy, but none of the sightings were corroborated. Then, in 2005, disturbing photos emerged on a website allegedly showing her under the name Joss, leading some to believe she may have been trafficked, but nothing ever proved it. In 2010, authorities declared Amy legally dead. 2 decades later, the question of what happened to her remains unanswered. It's still chilling how a young woman captured laughing and dancing without a care in the world could vanish without a trace the next moment.
I feel like the worst part about someone you care about disappearing is not knowing, what happened to them, Because, you still have hope that they're out there and they're fine, but you can't really, know anything or prove anything because, you haven't seen them in years. I feel like it's better to find out they, passed on, that than not knowing. But I don't know, it's kind of crazy that someone can just disappear like that and not be found even decades later. But man, yeah, y'all be careful out there. You never know.
JonBenét's pageant tapes. On the Christmas morning of 1996 in Boulder, Colorado, the Ramsey family was up not to celebrate Christmas cheer or unwrap presents, but to fly to the devastating knowledge that their daughter, 6-year-old JonBenet, was missing. JonBenet was the star of the family and a pageant queen. The family had home video footage of her pageant shows where she sang and performed under bright stage lights while wearing adorable costumes. More than once, the 6-year-old ended up with the winning crown, but JonBenet would never grow up to be a veterinarian, and she would never grow up at all. This was one of her last performances at a local mall just 3 days before that Christmas morning. Now all the family could find in the home was a ransom note on the kitchen stairs demanding exactly $118,000. An oddly specific figure raised more than a few eyebrows, especially since it was the exact amount JonBenet's father, John Ramsey, had received as a recent bonus. 5 hours later, he searched the home again and found JonBenet's body in the basement wrapped in a blanket. Suspicions swirled. The ransom note's length, tone made many experts believe it was staged, possibly by someone familiar with the family, someone who knew John's bonus number, someone like JonBenet's own parents, John and Patsy. It didn't help that handwriting analysis concluded that Patsy had written the ransom note. There were also no footprints in the snow around the house to support the theory that an intruder had come in. Investigators were convinced the whole scene had been staged to throw them off, and someone inside the home was behind it. In fact, there was a grand jury vote in 1999 recommending indictment of both parents for child endangerment and accessory charges. The only thing that kept them from getting charged was that the prosecution wasn't convinced they had enough to nail them with the crime, and for a decade, it was common knowledge that John and Patsy had gotten away with her murder. Some even thought her then 9-year-old brother had done it, and they were covering up for him. Fast forward to 2008, when there was a break in the case. DNA technology caught up with the case, and the unknown male DNA that had been found on JonBenet's clothing could finally be tested. But instead of proving that the Ramseys were behind the death, it cleared them of all suspicion. Only then was it generally accepted that an intruder had broken into the home that night, but Patsy died before her name was cleared. Many believe the years investigators spent focusing on the Ramseys had allowed the real killer to slip away. Nearly 3 decades on, no one has been arrested or charged with her. All that remains are the pageant videos, the little girls spinning in tiaras, and an unsettling basement that holds the secrets of the horrors that happened that fateful night.
Imagine you being those parents and a bunch of people out there think that you're responsible for your own child's death. You know, the whole time people sending you death threats, people saying all kinds of things about you, while the real killer is out there somewhere. I don't know what I would have done, and to imagine that the woman died without ever finding some kind of peace about the situation. But I wonder who was responsible. And it's crazy we live in a world where people can get away with things like this. I feel like I don't know much about being a parent or anything like that, but I feel like you shouldn't put your child in the spotlight like that, especially when they're that young, because it attracts a lot of horrible people who might want to do something to your child. But what do you all think happened to her, and who was responsible?
The lens finds his barrel. It was December 6, 2021, and Patricia Birmingham was about to catch her final moments right on camera. She and her 60-year-old intoxicated husband, Carrie, had been arguing. She left the house to put some space between them, but Carrie, barely dressed in a bathrobe, followed her, even going as far as chasing after her when she ran. After a while, a seemingly exhausted Carrie turned away and headed back for the house. Patricia thought he had been tired out and followed. Little did she know that she was walking right into a trap. Just as they hit the driveway, Carrie revealed something he had been hiding under his bathrobe all along. Perhaps she thought the gun wasn't loaded, or she thought filming him on her phone was enough to get him to back off. Whatever the case, Patricia had miscalculated just how far her husband would go. In a moment that seemed too quiet to be real, Carrie ended his wife's life in a chilling instant. His final words to her showed no sign of remorse.
You really want this on video?
I pull it. I'm mad enough to pull it.
Neighbors called 911 and Carrie was quickly arrested, but investigators still wanted to find out why he had done it. They got their answers when an audio recording of the argument in the home was found.
You have a love affair with that Mexican.
I wasn't having a love affair.
Yeah, you were. That's why you're on too legal.
No, that's
This all makes sense now.
that's not what I'm on to. I've never even seen that guy.
But they never found any evidence to support his claim. And that's not the worst part. Carrie pleaded guilty and ended up with a 10-year sentence. In fact, in 5 years, he'll be eligible for parole and could show up right in your neighborhood.
Even if she was having an affair, I feel like that's not something you should, kill someone over, Because that's crazy. Like, no one deserves to die over something like that. And they didn't even find anything. But I feel like 10 years is a short time to, be in jail for killing someone, for taking away someone's life. But maybe it's just where he was from, and the jury and, everything like that. But yeah, people like this walk around us, all the time, and you'd never know.
Jonestown Home Movies. Back in the mid-1970s, the People's Temple, led by charismatic preacher Jim Jones, began assembling glossy, idealistic footage. In these films, smiling faces worked the land, children ran carefree, and rows of wooden cabins stood neat and orderly. Jonestown, officially the People's Temple Agricultural Project, was sold as a utopian paradise in Guyana where people could live free from racism, social injustice, and exploitation. To many, it seemed like hope. And by 1977, hundreds of believers had relocated from the United States to what promised to be a socialist refuge. The compound had dorm-style cabins, shared kitchens, a health center, a library, and work fields. The commune looked peaceful, purposeful, and progressive. But behind the cheerful propaganda, life in Jonestown wasn't the peaceful agricultural haven the films promised. The workdays were brutal. Long hours under the tropical heat, punishing discipline for dissent, and strict controls over daily life. Members' passports and medications were confiscated. Communication with the outside world was censored, and attempted escape meant punishments like being forced to take drugs. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter. Inside, psychological pressure, humiliation, and physical abuse became routine. Both children and adults were bombarded by late-night meetings, propaganda films, and sermons where Jones alternately preached salvation and paranoia. Jim, who had once preached equality, had become a crazy ruler. He punished children by tying them in the forest while adults got beaten up. No one could break up or date anyone without his permission. By late 1978, concern from defector family members and friends back in the United States had mounted, and stories of abuse and imprisonment reached the ears of Californian Congressman Leo Ryan, who decided to travel to Jonestown on November 17, 1978, along with journalists and relatives of Temple members, hoping to uncover the truth. What they learned was that many of the followers had only good things to say about life in Jonestown. But then people began slipping them notes requesting help to leave. The congressman hid his findings, and during the celebration that evening, he even made a flowery speech about how happy everyone was. Meanwhile, he had already made plans for another plane to be on standby to take everyone who wanted to leave. The following day, Ryan, the journalists, and a handful of defectors were at the airstrip getting ready to leave. One plane was already taxiing down the runway when suddenly one of the cult members pulled out a gun and opened fire. The man had been instructed by Jones to make sure no one was left alive. Those on board managed to overpower the shooter, but the second plane wasn't so lucky. Everyone was still climbing on board when a truck and tractor filled with armed men suddenly showed up and opened fire. Some ran into the forest to hide, and others were killed instantly, including the congressman. The first plane contacted Guinea's authorities about what had happened. By the next day, armed troops were sent down to put an end to Jonestown, but they were greeted with an eerie silence. As they flew over, they were greeted with the sight that would haunt them. Hundreds and hundreds of bodies. Among them were a handful of survivors who told them what had happened. Almost immediately after the shootings, Jones ordered what he chillingly called a revolutionary act. He commanded his followers to assemble in the pavilion and drink a cyanide-laced fruit drink. It was something the cult had practiced many times. They all lined up and, under the watchful eyes of the armed guards, took a drink and waited to die a painful death. But not everyone died this way. Jones was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The promotional dreams of Jonestown were now buried with the bodies of 900 people who were once told that they would be in paradise.
I feel like a lot of us have, heard about this. It was pretty much everywhere back then, and even, years later after that. But we had something similar happen here where I'm from. And so many people died as well. And there's really nothing you can do, because like if someone wants to join a cult, what do? You can't stop them. You can't force them to stay. You can't force them not to go. So I guess the best thing you could do is like look for signs, in your family or in your friend groups, and try talk them out of it, and see how it goes. But other than that, there's really not much you can do. But I feel like the government needs to have stricter laws against this. But that kind of infringes on your freedoms and stuff like that. So it's quite the predicament. There's no way to really stop this. But thankfully nowadays there aren't that many cults like this. I mean, they're still there, but not as dangerous. But that was a pretty fun video, relatively. Even if a lot of the stories involved a lot of death. I'll leave the link to the original video in the description, so you can go check it out yourself without the reaction. And this guy makes a lot of interesting videos. And thank you for watching, and see you guys in the next video.
Kick.